guest speaker. Rabbi Yaakov, do you mind starting? So we have Rabbi Yaakov Schwartz here. He's a rabbi in the community who's teaching classes, and also, with Hashem's help, we have a Beis Shemesh. So we wish him great atzlacha. Happens to be that his father-in-law, Rabbi Yaakov, I know, and those from Morristown should remember Rabbi Lebovik. I don't recall if he was there when Rabbi Vichtenel Shalom was there, but he was a teacher in Morristown, and later, probably still is a Rav in Maplewood, New Jersey. So, first we know Rabbi Lebovik, and it's an honor to have Rabbi Yaakov with us, who will inspire us with some words of Torah. Yeah.
Rabbi Dolphin. It's a wonderful addition to our community to have Rabbi Dolphin here and bring his special ruach and abilities. One of the svarim, many svarim I think Rabbi Dolphin has written, has to do with Rav Soloveitchik and the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So when it comes to this time of year, we think about Shabbos Shuvah drushes, Rosh Hashanah, when the Ran drushes, there was no one more famed for their brilliant shiurim on the topics of tshuva than Rav Soloveitchik. So I thought we'll bring one word from Rav Soloveitchik and then maybe something about how it relates to us personally. So we'll put on our lumdus caps a little bit because he was a big brisker. We have left side, right side of the brain. We have to merge, as the Rav Dolphin did, the Chasidus with the lumdus, and then we have everything together. Then we really got the whole thing.
This is also lumdus.
What's that?
See, this is also
there's a brisker lumdus, a Hasidic lumdus. You got to bring it together. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to have something from Soloveitchik, something from Chasidus. We're going to bring it all together. Okay, now the Rambam asked the Soloveitchik asked a very interesting question. He says in the very beginning of Hilchos Shofar, the Mikdash Hayutokim b'Rosh Hashanah b'Shofar Echad. There was one shofar in the Beis Hamikdash, but it wasn't the only thing that was sounded. What else was being blown simultaneous with the shofar? Trumpets, which are known as chatzotros, and two of them. In other words, the chatzotros outnumbered the shofar 2-1. And the Rambam goes on to explain the lama tokim imo b'chatzotros. After all, the mitzvah of the day is shofar, right? It says Yom Trua Yelachem. It doesn't say Yom Chatzotros Yelachem. And we associate the Trua with the shofar. Mishum shenemar bechatzotros v'kol shofar hariu lifnei hamelech Adonai. Notice the chatzotros get the top billing. Chatzotros and kol shofar hariu lifnei hamelech Adonai. So Soloveitchik asks a simple question. He says, I want to understand how this din works. Let's break it apart. Is the chatzotros part of the din of the shofar? In other words, when you blow the shofar in the Beis Hamikdash, the shofar must be accompanied by the chatzotros. In other words, or the other way around. Is it that the shofar has to be blown for Rosh Hashanah? Just so happens to be that one of the places that it's blown, it's a mitzvah to blow it in the Beis Hamikdash. And guess what? Whenever you have this type of thing, like a shofar in the Beis Hamikdash, it's always accompanied by chatzotros, like an honor guard of sorts.
Is there any other time where you blow the shofar that you blow the trumpet also?
Okay, great. Excellent question. We're going to get to it in 1 second. So that was his chakira. Now, what will be the difference, the halacha l'maisa? The difference is very simple. If there are no trumpets available in the Beis Hamikdash, whatever, that day, there was a Levium strike in the Beis Hamikdash, so then the Baal Tokeah will blow without it. Will we fulfill our mitzvah or not? Or when we can say, I'm going to get you chatzotros in 3 hours. Do we delay everything and wait till the chatzotros come and then only do it? That was his question. And he goes on to say that the second opinion is what his father held and what he himself personally espoused. I'll tell you why. He says it's not a halacha. It's not a halacha per se about the shofar, because we do blow the shofar outside, right? We blow the shofar in every place in the world without chatzotros. He says it's something special about the shofar of the Beis Hamikdash. What is that? So he says as follows. Nira di Yisod Chodash B'Shitas HaRambam B'Chol Zeh. That shiny tekiah shofar sheyesh bo kiyum shel shira b'hilul. When you blow shofar, one aspect of the shofar, and there are many aspects of the shofar. Sadia Gaon wrote about was it 15? 10 or 15 explanations why shofar, many different ways reminds us. Har Sinai reminds us of many things. But one aspect of it is that we're like saying Hallel, we're saying Shira in front of Hashem. We're mamish rejoicing in front of Hashem.
Amen.
Which explains a few unusual things about Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is Yom Hadin for the whole world. Mi b'mayim, mi ba'esh. Do I have to say anything to us this year about mi b'mayim? Which house in Tampa is going to get hit? Which house is not going to get hit? Which house in North Miami Beach? I saw, they said on the news that there was one little place that there was no hurricane storm flood watch for. You know where it was? North Miami Beach till Juniper Inlet. That's the most heavily concentrated Makom Torah in the whole area.
Really?
Yeah. And I couldn't believe it. I heard it and I said, wow, North Miami Beach has more yeshivas and more shuls and more Sifrei Torah and more everything there than anywhere else.
Right.
Maybe in the whole state of Florida. And that was the one place, mi b'mayim, mi ba'esh. It's a serious day. Why are we celebrating? Why are we getting dressed up big day Yontif? We should be groveling in Hashem. Sak ve'efer, like on Yom Kippur we read the Torah of Yonah. Everybody was crying. They put sak ve'efer on the animals. Because the animals are going to be judged today. Why are we so joyous? And obviously it has to do with the shofar. The shofar signals us, and not only shofar, but the Rav said the 10 psukim that we say, Malchus, Zechonos, Shofros, are a kiyum in some sort of hallel. That's what's accompanying. In other words, the instrument for the shira is the shofar. And we merge the shofar with these psukim, which include praises of Hashem. And he goes through shofars, for example, Ha'alu b'nevel b'chinor, Ha'alu b'kol shofar. And it's a Nevel and Kinor are obviously, that's the Klezmer festival. That's the instruments of Simcha. So the Rav's Shita is as follows. Muchach, the shofar shel Rosh Hashanah yesh bo kiyum shira. It is Hallel. We're singing Hallel. It's analogous, by the way. They asked the question, why don't we blow Hallel? Why don't we read, say Hallel on when? On Purim. And there are many answers given. One of the answers given is Kriyasa Zuhi Hilula. We're reading the Megillah, and by telling the story of the Megillah, we're praising Hashem because we see Hashem's hidden hand operating. So in a way, what the Rav Pshat is saying is that Tikiyasa Zuhi Hilula. By blowing the shofar, you're actually fulfilling an aspect of Hallel, and therefore, since Hallel in the Beis HaMikdash requires Chatzotzros, that's part of the deal. When they blew the Chatzotzros, when they poured the Nisuch HaYayin, which is the most joyous time. So you see, the Chatzotzros were used as an expression of musical joy in front of Hashem. So that's appropriate for the shofar, especially by us, in the Gvulin, wherever we are, it's still through the shofar itself. In fact, the Gemara in Sukkah says, there was a machlokas about whether we say Ein Shvus, we say Ein Shvus B'Mikdash. You're allowed to do certain derabbanans if they're part of the Avodah Beis HaMikdash. They wanted to know about Simchas Beis HaShoeva. Another instrument that we use besides the shofar is what? What's the big instrument on Simchas Beis HaShoeva? The Chalil, the flutes. So are you allowed to blow those on Simchas Beis HaShoeva in Beis HaMikdash? You can make a gathering. Theoretically, you could have Simchas Beis HaShoeva every night, right? And what if it's Shabbos Chol HaMoed? So Shabbos Chol HaMoed, yes or no? You're going to have a Chalil or not? Big machlokas in the Gemara. It depends on this point. Ikar Tkiya B'Shir is the main thing. Is Ikar Shir B'Kli. When you make the shir, you have to have instruments. Otherwise, it's not. Can you imagine like a wedding where it's the wedding where the guy is just with the drum, like in Yerushalayim. It's nice, but it's a drum. Let's bring out the klezmer. Let's bring out the 7-piece orchestra. That's right. So can you do the Chalil on Shabbos Chol HaMoed? Yes or no? The Gemara argues the point. It says big machlok. It's a machlokas Amoraim, machlokas Tanaim. They want to set it up, and there's machlokas. Some say yes, some say no. Why? Because what's the definition of shira? Is shira song, musical song by singing, a cappella, or is there something lacking in the shira? If it's not accompanied by the full force of the instruments, zelozeh, it's not going to lift my heart in shira the same way. That's why you're allowed to listen to the a cappella on Sphira, right? as they say, zelozeh. So some say that the Khalil is part of that process. It has to be there, and therefore it can be dispensed the general Issur D'Rabbanan. What are we afraid of? We're afraid of that you're going to fix it. These things require a lot of maintenance. The wind instruments can be easily broken. They're very fine. They have reeds. Any musicians here? No. It's like it needs a lot of repair. And you're going to come to repair it. That could be tikkun 1. It could be a derisa violation of Shabbos. So let's stay away from that. The Gemara over there says, and the Tosfos over there says, okay, but we'll still have the shofar. Okay. Like even if you're worried about Shabbos, that's only for that stuff. If Shira's Bikli, we still might aser a Khalil because it's like one of these things that for sure is going to break down and we're going to come to Chilul Shabbos. But we could still have Shira B'Kli. You know what we're going to use? We're going to use a shofar. The last time I heard, I didn't see any shofars at weddings. Have you seen shofars at weddings? It's not like, okay, I got a violin, we're going to add a few pieces, saxophone, this and that, and a shofar. You're not going to get paid a lot. If you're a musician who specializes in shofar for weddings, you're not going to get a lot of business. Got to break it to you. So what do you mean? This is blowing, this is blowing. It's not happening. And yet, that's exactly what the Gemara indicates, is that, no, that's not true. That's not true. You got it all wrong. There's an aspect of shofar which is complete, utter musical ecstasy. But only if it's the Beis Hamikdash. Really. But even where we are, partially. How do you know? Because it's with the chatzotros, fine. But that's the ultimate. But, in the meantime, we are saying Hallel with Hashem. Now, what does this mean?
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Nowadays, why don't we blow shofar on Shabbos? The answer I was given is because maybe it'll break. So you said before
No, not because it'll break. Carry it.
Carry?
Yeah, not because of
Reason?
Really?
Because there's many rules about how to blow, what's a kosher tkiya, and what's not a kosher tkiya. and how long you
Everybody
have to
looks
blow.
at it this way and that way, and maybe it's broken.
No, that's not the issue. The issue is that you need to know how to blow, and that requires somebody who has some expertise. So you're going to take your shofar out in the street to go find that guy who's going to show you how to blow it.
Gotcha.
That's it.
Thanks.
Okay. So actually, the Rav adds one piece here which I think is just beautiful, and that's really the point I want to try to make here. It says, "Arei shofar hu shira verina lifnei Hashem." B'tam hadavar. What does it represent? Mefurish b'ksuvim. Listen to this. Kiva lishbot es haaretz. Shofar is always about judgment, but there's one judgment about which we are ecstatic, and which is that Ki lecha ki Hashem miskalel lanu b'kach shehu ba lishbot et haaretz. Kiva lishbot et haaretz. That we sing in Udarana, right? Kiva lishbot et haaretz. There's a great simcha. Oh, 1 second. It's midas hadin. It's mi b'mayim, mi ma'ish. What's the great simcha? The great simcha is that look who's doing the din, the merciful, wonderful King. In other words, it's like when you go to traffic court, right? I don't know. Here it's different. Here you go to traffic computer. You can't go to a court. You can only file. You ever get tickets here? I don't know. You can't get tickets here. It's not a good idea. But in America, they get you to a real person, and you can go and give your case. So you got a judge who's in a bad mood that day. But if you have that guy, there's these judges that they work with the lawyers, and it's okay. I have an in over here. Thank God. It'll be an easier thing. But
Your father is the judge.
What's that?
Your father is the judge.
My father's a judge. Yeah. Somebody told me a great story. He said that his father was the principal of his elementary school. Can you imagine going to the public school? One of the fellows here, and in the public schools, big school, they had a tough system, and they had a penalty box that if you did something really bad, they put you in that box, and everybody says, "Oh, this guy's going to get it, really get it. This is it. This guy's finished." And of course, the principal directly deals with that. He came over to his son, who was in the box, and he wrote him a note, and he gave it to him, and he says, "Okay, now go." What was on the note? He says, "If you do this again, I'm going to sick your mother on you." Okay, so not only do we have a righteous, we don't have a judge who's a despot, who's a criminal, who's a shukhad. We have the righteous, gentle, wonderful King who only wants the best for us, and is going to put the world on the back onto the right track. And guess what? That's good for us. When there's a kinus tzaddikim, when the tzaddikim are together, like we say uvechein tzaddikim, yiru v'yismachu. Then what is it? It's the hanol lahem and hanol la'olam. It's good for everybody. It's good for the world. Now, I just want to end, a few more minutes. Oh, I have
More,
time.
you have plenty
I have
of
time.
time.
Okay, right. Okay, let's go.
Please, more.
So let's take that concept. So what the Rav is really saying is two things. On a halachic level, he's proven that that shofar and shira are connected. On a machshava level, to go to the meaning of it, he gave us an important clue. He said the joy and the shira. What are we celebrating? We're celebrating that the malchus the righteous malchus, the malchus Hashem, is being restored. Because when that happens to the world, so many good things happen to the world. But on the other hand, if you have malchus harishah, if you have a wicked that, I have to say more. Look today, for the whole world, we have one guy sitting up in near the Arctic Circle over there in North Korea, and it's malchus harishah, mamish, and he's threatening the whole world with destruction. You put a king in place, you put a malchus harishah in place, it could be catastrophic for the whole world, not just for one person. It's a catastrophe. So therefore, the battle is we're hoping for. Now, when the Beis HaMikdash exists, that's evidence that the Malchus Hashem, right, the Malchus HaTov, is prevailing in the world. When there's no Beis HaMikdash, it's not prevailing in the world. And I just want you to think, we came here to Eretz Yisrael to live. One of the great things about living in Eretz Yisrael, and why you're here, is because you want to be part of this process. You want to see the Malchus Hashem restored to the world. That's part of why we're here, at least for me. And where is the most difficult place for a Jew to say even the name of Hashem in the entire world? I mean, in the entire world. Where can a Jew not utter the name of Hashem?
In the connector.
It was better if they did it.
The bathroom.
Bathroom.
No, I'm saying not in a place where it's not tough. I'm talking about in a clean place.
Gaza.
In a clean place. I'd say never should have Gaza, but then you better run. But
Basic
tourists.
All
Right. It's considered an international crime. At least that's what
Har
they
Bayit.
might say. Right, it's Har Bayit, right? What's Har Bayit? It's Malchus Hashem. Think about it. Can you name me, I don't know, how many people out of 7 billion people on the planet, how many people do you think totally would advocate that the name of Hashem should be, we should sing these praises, right? We should say, Kiva lishpos es haaretz, and we should sing the 10 Hilulim of David HaMelech over the Halul, B'nevel, L'china, Halul, B'tek HaShofar. Try to bring a shofar to Har Bayis. What are they going to do to you?
They'll chauffeur you out.
If you're lucky. They'll ride, the chauffeur will ride over you on the way out, maybe. So you have to understand very deeply that we're not there, and there's major opposition that we can't even fathom because that's what we grew up with, that's what we know. But if you have a different mindset saying something wrong with this picture, something very wrong with this picture, why is the entire world invested in this? Because they don't want Malchus Shamayim to be established, the Kisei Malchuso. And there's a battle going on, and it's the battle, it's the ultimate battle. Okay, and it's been going on for a long time. So, on the other hand, I like to speak, the mitzvah of shofar is lishmoa kol shofar. You gotta hear, right? We say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. We don't say, we're not here to go around to blow shofars. We have to hear the shofar. The shofar is what reminds us of the big picture, the ultimate goal, the simcha that we're going to have when Malchus Shamayim is reestablished. That's what we're looking for. So, but, we do see signs that Hashem is kind of exerting a little of his Yad Chazaka in the world, especially in this year, correct? And I think it's important to hear. It's that there's been global shows, spectacular shows of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kochos in the world, even in this past month. Can you name all of them? Can you name all the spectacular, incredible?
Two hurricanes.
Earthquake in
Eclipse.
the earthquake in Mexico, and
North
a
Korea.
very big wildfire in California.
Yes, very big wildfire in California.
The worst ever.
Really?
The worst ever, yes. People don't know that, but Rabbi Dolphin knows Los Angeles, and I a little bit too. So I'm waiting for Berkeley. I don't know what's going on with Berkeley. I think today Ben Shapiro is speaking in Berkeley. I think that's the big
How
onesh.
volcano and
They're
ice.
going for a terrible onesh today.
Right.
Yeah. So their mom is quaking. A real is near Melech Hashem. Okay. Hashem used, as he did with the Eser Makos, all the elements of the universe. What do you speak about? The 4 major elements, right? Afar, Mayim, Eish, Ruach. Where did he use the H? Los Angeles. Where did he use the Mayim?
Yeah, Florida.
And Houston. And also, where does he use the air? The air was the hurricane itself, right? It's like I think it was going around the internet that some kid saw the path of the hurricane,
Like a chauffeur.
and he said, "Daddy, it's a shofar. Hashem wants us to do tshuva," like an innocent kid. An innocent kid. So from the mouth of
People in New
babes.
York says shofar so good.
Shofar so good. So Hashem is literally, what's a hurricane? The hurricane it was 180 mile an hour winds. It's never been recorded in the history of Atlantic storms since they have records, maybe 100 years or so. Never been anything that strong. A strong blast of a shofar. It's time. It's time. And all in Elul. Now let's go back to the eclipse for a second. You know, the Gemara in Sukkah says that an eclipse of the sun is a bad siman for the non-Jewish nations, non-Jewish kings. You've heard that? Sukkah of Tesamad Aleph.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe the Rav mentioned it to you? Okay. So,
I came after the eclipse.
you came after the eclipse, okay, fine. So, and the eclipse went the full length of the United States from the Pacific Northwest, and that's where we would get San Francisco and these guys in. I think it was north of them, and then all the way across the United States. In about 7 years, there's going to be another solar eclipse that's going to run an exactly reverse path.
How many years?
About 7 years.
Yeah.
7 years. There's going to be a reverse. It's going to be the same idea, a solar eclipse, but the line of sight will be making like an X. It's going to start from the south, like from Southern California area, and move all the way up till the northeast. So it's creating a giant X. Okay? All right, Rabbi Blech, who was the Rav of the Shul, I was a Rav after him. He writes tremendously interesting things. He found out that there's a place where the X crosses. You know what the name of that city is? Little Egypt.
The meeting point in the middle?
What city is that? Oh, it's like I have to send you his article. I said I didn't. It was somewhere like in the
Missouri.
Missouri. No, I think in real middle America.
Probably Las Vegas.
North of Texas, So Little Egypt. What does that mean? Egypt is the Malchus. That's not for Hashem, and and Yidden, we're trapped in Mitzrayim. We're all trapped in Mitzrayim. Not the big Mitzrayim, but at least the little Mitzrayim. And what's the little Mitzrayim? With our own Yetzer Hara, what's the big Yetzer Hara for? What are the two things people want more than anything else in the world? And the Mishnah in Makkos tells us that.
Money and sex.
Money and arayos. Okay, that's right. And he says, no, more than money. Gezel v'arayos. They don't want kosher money and having relations in a halachically approved way. So fakir, the Yetzer Hara wants you to have stolen money and to have relationships that are not al pi halacha. And that's our challenge. He says, if you're porish from him, if you're porish from those things, the Mishnah at the end of Makkos says, Yiskilo l'dorosav, it'll help your family generations forward. V'dorei dorosav ad sof kol hadoros. Your decision that you make today, whether you're going to steal or not, that's going to have a positive schus if you listen all the way for who knows how many generations of your descendants. It's big stakes. And that's the Mitzrayim. That's really essentially what Mitzrayim is all about. Those two Inyanim and maybe Inyanim. So I think that, X marks the spot. And Hashem is telling us we've entered not only an Elul in a year, but a Tkufa, in which we really are looking to do a cleansing. Now, interesting about the sun, one last thing I'll tell you from Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman says following, in the very first Torah, he says that a person, whatever you're doing in life, whatever's happening to you, look at it and say, what is Hashem telling me at this second, and how can I use it to serve Hashem? You're going through a problem, turn it around. How is this an opportunity that I can serve Hashem better? Whatever issue you're having, positive or negative in your experience, he says that's the mitzvah. You have to be lishmoa kol shofar. When Hashem sounds the shofar in your life, or in our collective life, you got to wake up and say, okay, I'm supposed to be doing something here. What does this have to do with Shana? It's random, it has nothing to do with me. And he says, when we do that, this is his words, then that creates a connection between two letters, the letter Chet and the letter Nun. It says that represents the Chama. The Chama is the sun, right? And the Nun, which is representative of fish. The fish is hidden from the eye, right? It's hidden from the eye. It gets obscured. That's the Nun. When you put it together, Nischaber, Niskasher, Hachet Vanun, Nase Or HaLavana Or HaChama. The light of the moon will then become on equal terms with the light of the sun. Ukishizek Kam Zenofel. And what that means is that the moon, which represents Am Yisrael, right, is on the rise. That means Malchus Hashem is on the rise. That means that the Malchus HaRishah is on the descent. So look, the message was, I mean, how remarkable was it that, the stars came out in the middle of the day? Everybody thinks that the pshat is that the moon is going to start to shine from its own inherent light. And we know the moon doesn't have an inherent light. And if it does, it's not the moon. So what are we talking about? Well, we just saw a demonstration where the moon was able to overpower the sun completely. That may be when Hashem is giving us a strong message saying, this is your time, Kollel Yisrael. It's time to get the little Egypt, to put it into the darkness, like Makas Choshech, and it's time to come out, and time to establish. So on a small level, we each have to do our part. What does that mean? Bilvavi Mishkan Efnem. I can't build a Beis HaMikdash by myself, neither can you, we need Mashiach, and so on. But at least in my own Beis HaMikdash, I can put the right Melech in charge. That means Gezel V'Arayos, and that means Shmer Sanayim, and that means honesty, and that means Tefillah, and that means Shira, and that means being with Simcha. It means all the things that we want. We want the shofar, to the shofar, and the chatzotros. We should have the midas, and we should be happy about it because it's restoring a joy. That's why Rosh Hashanah is ultimately a happy day. Because when I rectify myself and I put Malchus Shemayim in charge of my mikdash, then that's a gilui Shem Shemayim, and it brings simcha. Should bring us a lot of joy too. There's no bigger simcha than somebody who really is a sincere Baal Tshuva and feels cleansed by the Tshuva, right? Those are the happy people in the world. Those are the people who feel Mushar and feel Hashem's love touching him. So my bracha to everybody is that remember we have a tremendous achrayus, our own personal mikdash, but it has to be with simcha. You got to go into Yantif. I get to Rosh Hashanah, I get to Yom Kippur, I got through it. No, it's a joyous time. It's a rectification, and hopefully one by one we'll build a little mikdash, and collectively, B'ezras Hashem, we'll see the Binyan Beis HaMikdash from here and beyond.
I have a question on the Rav's part. So, is the Rav saying that the content of the mitzvah of shofar is simcha? I mean, is he giving a halachic? Is he saying that there's also a halachic issue of simcha on Rosh Hashanah?
Correct. There's a massive halachic issue of simcha on Rosh Hashanah. And it comes all the way back to times of Ezra. It comes, by the way, halachic l'maisa. They said that the Vilna Gaon wouldn't let people cry. He says, you're going to start to cry, get out of shul. We don't want anybody crying here. But, I've been to a lot of...
Crying opens the gate of tears.
What's wrong with crying?
It should be the opposite.
It should have been the opposite. So they say there's a difference, well, if it's a cleansing, sincere type of crying, but a cry, right? It's a different type of crying than a crying of bitterness and sadness and loss and avelus. There's a crying of avelus, and then there's a crying of tshuva, and there's two different types of crying.
It's also a crying of happiness.
And tears of joy. That's appropriate. But they say basically we want to be joyous about this process. Lifnei mi atam etahir, mi metar eschem avishal Mitzrayim. Who's the judge? Because Baruch Hu is, and he's going to dip us in the mikvah. He's not going to. He wants us. He's taking us through the mikvah. He's going to cleanse us. It's going to be okay.
But I'm asking a very narrow question. I'm not asking the metaphysical hashkaf. I'm asking
The halacha l'maisa you want to know?
I want to know if the Rav believed that in halachic terms there's a mitzvah of simcha vis-a-vis the shofar.
The shofar. He says the shofar is a aspect of shira, and he notes here. He says we're not allowed to go overboard and sing shira b'peh, but we're allowed to do the shira through the shofar. So it does have this element of din. And by the way, that's very reflective of the idea of what Ezra told everybody who started crying. He said, "No, go b'simcha, go b'simcha to your houses and rejoice. You don't have to be tzibrochen and broken on this day, Rosh Hashanah. We came back to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. It's going to be good. Yeah, you'll have to do tshuva." They brought Asar Yuchsin Alom Bavel. They brought people there. They were intermarried. This, that, that. You know where they're coming from. They wanted to cry. They felt so bad. Don't cry. No. That's part of the aspect of Rosh Hashanah. So through the shofar and the psukim of Malchus, Chronos, and Shofars, and maybe if we concentrate on those words when we daven in the joyous sense, then we'll be Mekayim, this thing that we gave Shira Ki'ilu B'fnei the Beis HaMikdash B'fnei Hashem.
I have two things that I wrote about in my book that touch upon this that might be of importance. The Rav, he writes it in his no Kashta Isha, halachic man, Isha halacha. You all know the Rav wrote a very, very important
Which Rav?
sefer called Halachic Man.
Who?
He writes there that one Rosh Hashanah, when he was in Chaslavich, where his father, Abosha, was a Rav in Chaslavich, a little town there in Russia, where the Rav was born, well, whatever. And the Baal Tokeya, they were Hasidim, the Lubavitcher Hasidim in Chaslavich.
Nothing.
So he says that the Baal Tokeya was a Chabad Chosid. And he went up to the Bima Rosh Hashanah, and he took the shofar, and he was about to make the brachas, and he broke out crying. He was crying bitterly because he was so moved and humbled that he has to blow the shofar for all the Yidden. So the Rav says that his father chastised him. Now, when I read the story, I had a very big problem with the story. And I investigated, and I wrote about it. So that's not what I want to tell you what I wrote about, but I took the story apart and I
Buy the book for $25
anyway,
in my house.
now listen. So I wanted to really understand if the Rav would have done the same thing. Would the Rabbi Soloveitchik, not his father, Moshe, would he have done the same thing? So I asked Reb Hershel Schechter, who was like the Rosh Hashiva at Yeshiva University at the Yitzchak of Chanan, and kind of as far as the Rosh Hashiva, like replacing Rabbi Soloveitchik, whatever. So I asked him if he ever spent the Yomim Neiroim with Rabbi Soloveitchik, and he said yes, several times. Every year, he went especially from New York to Boston, where the Rav had a shul in Maimonides Day School. So first I asked him, so there must have been a few thousand people there. He says, yeah, there were 40 people there. I said, what? Rabbi Soloveitchik had 40 people in the shul? He says, yeah, that's the way he wanted it. Because he kept minhagei brisk, like Rabbi Schwartz said. He was a brisker, Chaim brisk, of Lashon, the Vilna Gaon, he kept. And although he didn't impose everything on the congregation, he told me that, but Rosh Hashanah, everyone, of course, respected and looked towards him, and there were certain things that he did in the congregation during davening were minhagi brisk. So I said, and he knew that that's not really for the populace. So he didn't make no marketing and no campaigns, and if I understood Rabbi Schechter, kind of, he discouraged people from kind of davening. This was like his own minion, and he would always say, I'm not the gabbai here, and ask the gabbai, and all that, but everyone knew Rabbi Soloveitchik is davening here. And then I asked Rabbi Schechter, and this is why I'm mentioning it regarding tears, did you see him crying on Rosh Hashanah? Did you see him being emotional? I'd like you to tell me about how he davened. And this is what he said. He says, what I observed was that he did daven a slower Shmoneh Esrei. It's a longer Shmoneh Esrei, but it seemed like it was even a little slower than his Shmoneh Esrei pace during the year. but he said, I did not see him emotional. I didn't see him display emotions on Rosh Hashanah. Now, of course, you can argue that's because he was a brisker and maybe a little on the cold side. I mean, that's very argumentative because I think those who really knew him, he was far from cold, you know. But what you're saying is interesting, that it seems like his father as well, you know, chastised. And what I understand, just I don't want to leave you, you know, with a negative towards Moshe Soloveitchik. And Moshe felt, in halachic terms, that there's no inyan for tears Rosh Hashanah by Tkiyas. Now, obviously, others feel differently than him, but I think the Rav explains this either in halachic man or elsewhere. He explains that his father's chastising of the Baal Tokeya, who was genuine and sincere, and he didn't chastise him because the Rav says my father didn't chastise the Baal Tokeya because he wasn't sincere. God forbid, Chas v'shalom. He said he was pious, he was a chassid, he was really connected. But he felt halachically, you're going to blow the shofar. Right now, the avoda of tears is not relevant. Yeah. So I'm just sharing with you, you know, to support what Rabbi
There
Schwartz
was a
said.
Syrian young man who came to Vienna and he asked the Rav, can he shout by L'chud Rambam? He was a Kamina Chassid and he would shout. The Rav said, no, you're not allowed to shout in my shul by L'chud Rambam. When it came to Nishmas, he just couldn't
Hold himself back.
And the Rav said, you can't ask me in advance when you're going to shout, when you're going to scream, when you're going to cry. If it comes from itself, then. So this
So when I was about to K in my shul in Muncie, and I was in my year of Avelis for my father, and my Rav wouldn't let me blow shofar that year. It was deep into the year,
that's
but
enough.
even then,
yes,
he said,
by the way, it's brought down here in this Torah here.
right.
That's
So
enough
this
to
falls
know
into
Lamaisa,
the whole.
right,
You don't want someone to be sad. That you shouldn't have any feel. There shouldn't be someone in Avelis
even more than that.
That's how
Can an
Vegas.
Ovel get up and lead the Kehillah and Shira in Hallel?
No.
No. That's why you don't let him starving from Mishtaba. You don't let him daven
Right.
on a day. So he says that's the reason why you wouldn't take someone who's in Avelis to blow shofar,
Right.
Because they're puzzled in their state of Avelis from leading in the Shira.
So it must be that there's a serious connection to Simcha in the whole shofar.
Remember, the Rav said that, but if the mother is there and every year the son has blown shofar,
That's a different story.
then,
Right.
then
That's a really different
it's-
set.
Right, that's a different-
It's obligatory for the kahal to permit this person to
If not to give her tsar.
Rabbi Schwartz, shkoyach.
Thank you so much.
Yashakoyach, Rabbi Schwartz, thank you. Yashakoyach, beautiful. And everyone try to see the Teva, that you might see it in your endeavors, and Hashem have a beautiful Kehillah and the Mishkofayim.
Amen.
Shkoyach.
Terrific.